Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to yet another edition of Truth to Power. My name is Faraz Patel. I'll be in your company for the next 50 minutes or so. What a week it has been in the South African political sphere. Another senior member of the DA squad and a former member of the DA in Herman Mashaba has gone ahead and launched his very own political party called Action SA. And then, of course, there was the ANC-NEC meeting. And, of course, prior to that NEC meeting, we had former President Jacob Zuma with a scathing letter to current President Cyril Ramaphosa. It may have been a pathway for the current president to be potentially axed as his position as the ANC president, but he survives and he gets the backing from some of the top six within the party. So to discuss all of this with me, I have renowned political analyst Dumisani Tembi. Dumisani, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making the time for us.
Thank you very much for us, and thank you very much for your great viewers.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Dumisani, we have to start off, of course, with the Democratic Alliance. John Moody leaving the DA. And one of his reasons was that there is a lack of transformation that is happening within the party, that some of the black members are being purged within that party. We look at the current setup of the DA, there is something that is onto, am I right?
Look, absolutely. Look, the DA has been in a repositioning process since the last election. Remember that in the last election, the DA lost approximately 1 million white voters to the Freedom Front Plus. And those are that's part of the constituency that matters absolutely for the DA. So what has happened since then is that the DA has been repositioning at two levels. Number one, to reposition itself as the proper and appropriate representation of the political party for white minorities, for white interests. And in the process, it has targeted the Freedom Front Plus as a political party that they have to deal with. So they are not concerned with the EFF, and because I think the DA has recognized that fighting for a bigger battle to be a ruling party, it means it must take the burden of transformation and carry the interests of black voters. So what it does now is to position itself as the appropriate political institution for the representation of the white minorities. So they are trying to recoup all those white people that it has lost to the Freedom Front Plus. So ultimately, the DA doesn't care whether they lose Herman Mashaba, whether they lose Musi Maimani or John Moodley, because frankly, that is not its positioning in the political spectrum of this country. So the DA is not interested in becoming the ruling party. It is more interesting in being the conservative preservation of white interest, minority interest in this country. And to that extent, they don't care about losing black voters. What the DA is concerned about is to remain the official opposing party to the ruling party, and in the process, sustain the interest of the white minorities that have benefited from apartheid's political economy for a long time.
And Dumisani, we talk about John Moody and his experience, 22 years within the party. How much of a loss is it that he is now leaving this party? But as you say, they're not worried about it. They just want to keep the interests of the white minority. But when you have somebody like John Moody, surely it's having him as an asset instead of a potential liability.
Look, he was a useful figure to the extent of attracting that particular constituency. Let's say the colored constituency, the Inuit minority. But if you look at the how Helen Zille has returned back into the party at the highest level of the party. It tells you that the DA is increasingly becoming a white conservative political party. So they will still get votes from, black township, but at the end of the day, that's not necessarily their representation. So Modi can go. There could be a hullabaloo about it, but the DA can bounce back in terms of its interest in getting black votes without necessarily representing black or Indian or colored, interests. So I assume that according to their analysis, he can go, but they can continue to get votes from those particular constituencies and represents, conservatively so, the white minority interest. Look, that's where the DA is going. So you see, the competition for the DA, as far as the DA is concerned, is not the ANC or the EFF. It is the Freedom Front Plus. Because the Freedom Front Plus poses a danger of emerging as the major political party that represents white conservative interests. And that's where the target of the DA is.
And Dumisani, when enhancing the interests of the white minority, the return of Helen Zille back as the federal chairperson just shows that this is the path that they're going to be choosing, because we continually see her with the tweets about colonialism, with the tweets about apartheid, and the sort of sympathy she shows towards apartheid. That definitely just justifies what the current DA and what it stands for is heading for.
Look, absolutely, because a few things. Number one, the DA can present itself as the part of non-racialism, as Moses Maimane tried to position the DA as the party for one South Africa for all, because that space ideologically is occupied by the African National Congress. And secondly, the DA can present itself as the party for radical transformation, because the EFF and the faction of the ANC has already presented itself as that party that represents that particular ideological agenda. And then the DA can also present itself as that conservative formation that represents the interests of the white minority, because the Freedom Front Plus has already done that. So what the DA needs to do is to position itself ideologically and in terms of the constituency. Now, if you look at all of this formation, and given the experiences that the DA has gone through in being the coalition leaders at PE, Johannesburg, and the city of Tshwane, it has realized the burden of transformation. So the only thing that the DA can do, frankly, is to dislodge the Freedom Front Plus and present itself as the mainstream representation of white conservative interests. And that's the truth. That's what it has chosen. So this is why, no matter how many prominent black leaders in the DA leave, it's immaterial, because that's not where the party is going. The party is not trying to become the ruling party, because it will have to end the burden of transformation. So it is okay where it is. Its target is the Freedom Front Plus, because it needs to position itself as the duly representative of the white minority interest.
Dumisani, this weekend, of course, the DA will be holding its policy conference. Now, we know that there are two leadership candidates, of course, the interim leader, John Steenhuisen, and then, of course, we have Mbali Ntuli. I think when looking at both of them, both of them have two different sets of ideologies, two sets of policies. How do you think it will go with regards to this conference? Because as everybody knows, and as you have mentioned, what the DA stands for, Some would say that Mbali Ntuli is walking into a potential trap or she has herself cornered. Where do you see this going with regards to the policy conference this weekend?
Look, I think the Mbalintuli character within the DA will only serve to highlight the conservativeness of the DA. So she will be useful, but not for the DA progression, but for those that are going to attack the DA for its racial conservativeness. So because Mbalintuli represents that part of the DA that says they need to take part into transformation, they must become part of diversity discourse in this country, and that is not going to win. So they immediately, officially, John Station is proclaimed as the winner. You will have a stamp sealed upon the DA that it is a conservative, it's a white conservative political party. So any sense of diversity or any sense of representation of blackness from the townships to emerge as a significant policy agenda of the DA. And in the process, this policy conference will be extremely useful for other political parties that are contesting against the DA from being the official opposition. So it's a policy conference that at the end of the day, it is going to backfire on the DA than presenting the DA as a progressive political party.
Dumisani, we'll be coming back after the break. We're done with John Moody and, of course, his departure from the DA. After the break, we'll be discussing a former DA member in Herman Mashaba and, of course, him launching Action SA. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Truth to Power. I am joined by renowned political analyst Dumisani Tembi. Dumisani, now Herman Mashaba, of course, a couple of months ago launched the People's Dialogue. Now, this wasn't an official political party, according to him. It was just a movement to get South Africans involved in the way going forward. Now it is transcended into Action SA. Herman Mashaba cuts a figure where a lot of people say, well, which direction is he truly going? Is he somebody who will be for the black Africans who have suffered so much under colonialism and apartheid? Or is he going to try and also at the same time massage white interest and, of course, that of the corporate? So where do you see this Action SA moving into, Dumisani?
I think there are serious challenges. Well, number one, the unfortunate thing is that Action SA under Herman Mashaba, it had to launch itself under the environment of COVID-19, which means you can't gauge its manifestation of representation at a grassroots level because it can only be launched online. Secondly, there's also the challenge that the dialogues that preceded the launch of the party, they have not been visible either on TV or on radio or in any other manifestation. So what we know is what Herman Mashaba and his comrades have told South Africans that this is what happened. So frankly, we don't know, as South Africans. We have no idea. What we have to deal with is the extent that he carries integrity and character that demands or otherwise to be trusted or not. And the third part, which is the challenge with Action SA, is that a significant number of those that are in the core around Mashaba can be traced back to the Democratic Alliance. So these are the people who are disgruntled with the Democratic Alliance because, not necessarily because of the policies of the DA, but because individually they were unable to progress in terms of the hierarchy of the DA. So if you look at the policies of the Action SA, personally, I am not convinced that they are different from the policies of the DA. Secondly, I am not convinced that they sound any different from what Musi Maimani's movement claims to represent. So at the end of the day, you have, a challenge that says, to what extent is this political party inherently a new political party in terms of bringing something new and different in the political spectrum of the South African political scenario? My immediate answer is that I'm not convinced that the Action SA brings something new. It brings a new personality in the form of Herman Mashaba. It brings in the former disgruntled members of the DA into the fold. But in terms of the political posture, in terms of the ideological posture, in terms of the policy orientation, I'm in the political spectrum. I'm not convinced as yet that there's something absolutely different, that there's something new that the party is bringing in that is not already in the political spectrum. But I'm also mindful of the fact that given the locked down regulations, it is very difficult to discern its presence at the grassroots level. Now, it does seem like Action SA has some significant presence in the social media, which is the elite spectrum of the political society in this country. The unfortunate part is that those that make noise in the media, in the social spectrum, the social media, these are the elites that actually don't vote when it comes to the voting days. So beyond the city of Johannesburg, I'm not convinced that Mashaba has presented himself as a national figure that is going to substantively challenge the ANC nationally. So it's okay to have a new figure, in the political spectrum, but the prospect of remains very limited.
Yeah, and of course, he did say that his immediate challenge is, of course, to challenge for the three metros. That is, of course, Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni. Dumisani, you talk about disgruntled members of the DA. Well, there's two members that are coming from the ANC that, on face value, do have that sense of disgruntledness within them. That is, of course, Dr. Makosi Khoza and Fakey Mentor. Now, some would say that bringing them does have that sense of political experience. But on the other side of the coin, having two ladies who just have that sense of, disgruntledness against the ruling party, is that something that Herman Mashaba gains, or would it backfire him in the long run?
Look, they don't carry a political cloud, the two individuals that you've mentioned, because their departure from the ANC does not necessarily seem to carry some kind of integrity and aura, for that matter. If you look at Dr. Makosi Khoza, she made some serious miscalculation. This is why she's typically in a political wilderness. If you look at Frankie Mentor, she made some serious blunder at the State Capture Commission. So both these two I'm not convinced that they carry some kind of heavy constituency in the political realm. So their usefulness is that they are in the media spectrum, household names, but I don't think they carry some serious constituency from the political spectrum of the country. So there's nothing that they are bringing into the Action SA because they are not political characters of integrity that draws particular constituencies from the ANC. They don't have that. So except their own names, there's nothing else that they are bringing into the Action SA.
Dumisani, we did say that, of course, John Moody's departure of the DA may potentially lead to him joining Action SA. Do you see this happening? Because remember, he is one of those who publicly defended Herman Mashaba when he quit as the mayor of Johannesburg. Let's just say it does happen. How much of an ally would he be to Herman Mashaba in terms of the experience and, of course, in terms of the constituencies, especially from the colored community?
Look, I will see that happening. I will see John Modley joining Mashaba, and for me, there's somebody from the DA that will carry a constituency with him into the Action SA. But not everybody else that has left the DA into the Action SA. This one, John Modley, beyond everybody else, I think that would be the most appropriate catch for Herman Mashaba. But for everybody else who has been in office politician,
Okay, I think we seem to have lost Dumisani there with regards to the connection. We're going to try and get him back. Dumisani, are you back?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, I'm
yes,
here.
we're continuing.
So I was saying, everybody else that has left the DA to join Herman Mashaba, they have been nothing else but office politicians, including Makosi Koza, including Mickey Fenton. Only John Moodley, if he was to join, only he could bring a given constituency to Herman Mashaba. But everybody else, they are just office administrative politicians.
Dumisani, to wrap up this segment, we know when we see these new political parties coming, we always have that sort of a comparison of, are they going to be like the EFF who have just jumped in to being one of the main opposition parties, or are they going to be a sort of a cope where they're there, but they're not really there? Where do you see Action SA, let's just say, in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, you're asking me to throw bones onto the floor. Look, let me tell you what the challenge that Herman. You see, the challenge of Herman Mashaba is his presence at the grassroots level. I'm trying to ignore that he does not have a liberation tradition. So if you look at the EFF, for example, they easily argued that the ANC is no longer the original ANC that was advancing the Freedom Charter. If you look at the COPE, that's how they started, but they were also caught up in their own leadership squabble between Lekota and Shilowa. So on the second scope, it is clear now that the new party is led by Herman Mashaba. But Herman Mashaba's challenge, they are at two parts. levels. One is an ideological one. He still has to convince a whole lot of people that ideologically he represents the best interests of the mass, not different from from the liberal Van Zyl. You know that this ideological stance that says grow the economy and the rest shall follow. You don't have, it doesn't sound any different from that. The other thing that might work, could work for him is his stance on the illegal immigration. But at the same time, he has to deal with the fact that there's a number of South African people whose ancestral lineage can be tracked to Swaziland, to Mozambique, to Malawi, to Zimbabwe, and all this kinds of against xenophobia. It will not necessarily work for him to be very harsh on illegal, immigrants. And thirdly, given the constraints of COVID-19, he has not demonstrated alignment with the masses at the grassroots level. So you have got all these liberals that write opinion pieces about Mashaba being a great guy, but you don't have the masses that articulate his greatness for the advancement of the mass. So he starts this COVID-19, it makes him, and ideologically, he is starting with the back foot. And then there's also the fact that geographically, in terms of political geographic stance, he has not shredded the fact that he has been a mayor of Johannesburg. So at this point in time, he's not being seen as a Gauteng political figure, and therefore he's not seen as a national political figure. So he started this political party significantly with his back against the wall. And I'm not convinced that he's alive to these sensitivities and they have strategized accordingly. That is expected of Herman Mashaba's party is limited to the city of Johannesburg and nothing beyond that. And that is the unfortunate part.
Dumisani, we will be coming back after the break from a newcomer of a party to an established party. We'll be discussing the ANC NEC that happened this past weekend. What are the outcomes of it? And of course, Monday's press conference with the top six. Stay tuned to Truth to Power. Welcome back to Truth to Power. Now, this past weekend, the ANC NEC took place in the capital city of Tshwane. Again, leading up to the NEC, we had a letter from former President Jacob Zuma having a sort of a scathing attack on Cyril Ramaphosa. A few minutes after that, ANC member Tony Ngeni had called for President Cyril Ramaphosa to step down. Then, of course, Andile Lungisa had also called for President Cyril Ramaphosa to step down and account for his CR17 bank statements. A lot of people would think, well, maybe President Cyril Ramaphosa just may have that hurt on him and he may just be called to step down. Well, it never happened, and Monday's press conference with the top six suggested that President Cyril Ramaphosa may have just strengthened his power even more within the ANC. I'm still joined by renowned political analyst Dumisani Dembi. Dumisani, was it in ever any doubt that Ramaphosa was in danger after Sunday evening?
No, not at all. The question was, when was it going to explode? When was it going to be, volcanic? And it happens last weekend. I think They waited, the anti-Cyril faction, it waited for an opportune moment. So the letter that Cyril wrote to ANC people, dismissing corruption and decrying corruption, it became a useful tool for his detractors to attack him. So I think that's what happened. So when they saw that letter, for them it was a blessing upon themselves to say that this is the moment to attack the president. That look, this is the one president that has only said that the ANC is accused number one in terms of corruption, which Cyril was correct. But for them, it was not about the correctness of Cyril. It was about the strategic, opportune moment to attack Cyril Ramaphosa.
Dumisani, we look at, of course, the two members of the ANC that have been asked to step aside. We've got, of course, Bongani Bongo, who seemed to be part of the RET faction, and then, of course, Zandile Gumedi, who was the former eThekwini mayor. She has these corruption allegations against her. She was, of course, sworn in into the KZN legislature. She's been asked to step down. Is that a sign that slowly but surely Cyril Ramaphosa is trying to, of course, get members of his party to step aside if there is any sort of allegations?
Well, no, look, absolutely not. The part of me wants to believe that Cyril Ramaphosa is keen on dealing with issues of corruption. But you don't deal with issues of corruption by appealing to the conscience of the ruling members of the ruling party. You deal with corruption by strengthening the criminal justice system to a point that whoever is involved in issues of corruption is dealt with accordingly. So they're arrested, they're investigated, prosecuted, and jailed. And that is not what is happening. So it's immaterial how many letters Cyril Ramaphosa writes to the ANC. The fact is there somebody senior enough that gets arrested for corruption, is prosecuted and jailed? And if you look at this thing, there are two unfortunate things. Number one, most of those that are actually suspended from government, prosecuted, it's junior officials. It is not your DG, it's not the head of department, it's not the CFO, it's not the MEC, it's not the minister. And these are the people that give instruction to these junior officials in a verbal way. So it's not written. They don't write these instructions, they tell them. And these youngsters, they know that if they don't do this thing, they will be fired. So why do? They do this thing, which is not to their benefit, but for the benefit of their political and the top administrative leaders. So what happens? You have got a system that ignores the faultiness of the political elite in the system. Rather, only the little perpetrators, administrative perpetrators. And that's very unfortunate from how I look into this thing. So there's a series of these cases of the, PPEs, corruption. What happens is MECs come up and they say that, this is what we are dealing with, the perpetrators of corruption. The HODs come up and say we are dealing with perpetrators of corruption. But we all know, or some of us know, how the system operates. So the youngsters, because they administratively, they do this thing on behalf of their heads of department and CFOs and political heads. They are the ones that get. So it's absolutely very unfortunate. So I'm not convinced that Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the country, has injected into the system a particular sense of dealing, forcefully with the anti-corruption issue. It has not happened, as yet. But what appears to be the case is that those that are not in the dominant faction within the ANC are the ones that get thrown into the State Capture Commission, and they're the ones that get to be prosecuted, unfortunately. So if you want to be alarmist, like I see this thing, there's a correlation between the rule of law in this country and those that get prosecuted because they are not in the dominant faction of the ruling party, which is extremely unfortunate. So there's practically nothing new, no energy, no spiritual sense, no force that Cyril Ramaphosa has injected into the fight against corruption.
Now, we talk about the dominant force, we talk about the superior force, we talk about the elite. One of them, of course, who has allegations ranging from A to Z is, of course, the Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule. How powerful is he, Dumisani, for all of those who just look at Ace Magashule on face value? And how difficult is it for a prosecution against him to happen? Because we've seen what faction he is of the ANC. He's, of course, part of the RET faction that is blindly loyal to Jacob Zuma. So how difficult is it for somebody like him to be prosecuted who just seems to be, on paper, untouchable?
Look, it's not difficult because there is evidence. There's evidence that appears from the work of the public protector. There's evidence that comes from the work of the State Capture Commission and other investigations. That's the work done by criminal enforcement agencies. But on top of that, Ace
We seem to have lost Dumisani Tembe. If they will try and reconnect with him. Of course, just giving us an idea of what is going on with regards to the ANC. Well, we have Dumisani back. Dumisani, you were continuing with regards to Ace Magashule.
Yeah, you see, personally, I don't think Ace is as powerful as people want him to believe to be. Because the power of Ace is dependent on the existence of an individual that can challenge Cyril Ramaphosa and his alignment to that individual. By himself, he is unable to challenge Cyril Ramaphosa. So these people, they're still mobilized around Jacob Zuma, but Jacob Zuma is not coming back. NDZ is not interested in, she's more interested in her future prospects rather than fighting back. So frankly, there's nobody that the anti-Cyril Ramaphosa faction has an individual to rally around and challenge Cyril Ramaphosa. This is why, personally, I don't understand why Cyril Ramaphosa does not hit hard against them, because for now, he's the only he is the only guy at the top without necessarily the talent. This is why I also think that the letter that Zuma and Lungisa wrote is more important for Ramaphosa because it allows him to draw, the fractional battles, and it enables them to hit as hard as possible, because he has been very diplomatic, but he's at this point in time where he's being attacked directly. So what must happen? He must let the law enforcement agencies deal with Ace. He doesn't have to lift his hand. But I think Cyril Ramaphosa is not playing the political card. And you can't be the president of the ruling party, the president of the ANC, without consolidating your political power in the organization. And how do you consolidate your political power? You hit your detractors hard. And if he was to hit Ace, trust me, nobody after Ace is hit will stand up in defense of Ace.
And that's the question, Dumisani, because when we saw former President Jacob Zuma, and of course his famous night of the long knives, where he got rid of Pravin Gordhan and Mcebisi Jonas from Treasury, we saw a hard approach from him. We saw somebody who wasted no time. Then, of course, on the complete opposite, we have President Cyril Ramaphosa, who tries to play more of the diplomatic game. You know, he tries to be the statement. He tries to be the man who wants to bring that sense of unity. But there doesn't seem to be a sense of unity within the ANC, because you have the New Dawn, you have the RET. Is it unfair to say that President Cyril Ramaphosa lacks the spine, lacks the backbone to go hard on his detractors, as you mentioned?
First thing, there's no RET.
But they tell us there's an RET, Dumisani. They tell us Jacob Zuma's people, you know, his loyal supporters are the RET.
No, there's no RET, because RET, it means a radical transformation.
Economic transformation, exactly.
But if you look at the proponents of RET who decry the so-called white monopoly capital, they don't want to destroy the capitalism as a system. They just want to be part of the table, to enjoy part of the cake of the so-called white monopoly capital. So the so-called RET forces, they don't want to destroy the system of white capitalism. They just want a piece of cake and a place on the table of Oppenheimer, Rupert, and all of that. So don't be distracted, but substantively, they don't exist. They're just a faction that want piece of a cake. They don't want a different cake. They just want a piece of the cake. That's one. Secondly, there's no New Dawn. Don't get caught up in this rhetoric. There's absolutely New Dawn. All of these things that are affecting South Africa, absolute poverty, unemployment, homelessness, poverty, and all of these things are still corruption. These are issues that have been going on for ages. And there's no sense that Cyril Ramaphosa has begun to nip these things in the bud. So there's absolutely no dawn, zero. There's no RET and there's no New Dawn. What is there, my chief? It's just this elite clashes within the ruling party about access and control of resources of the state for their own benefit, nothing else. So don't get caught up in this rhetoric. Not. It's a pity that in this country, even the Communist Party has stopped to talk about class dynamics. The fact is, we are all stuck in elite struggle for access and control and enjoyment of resources, and nothing else. There's no RET, there's no New Dawn.
And President Ramaphosa, does he have that backbone and spine to go after his detractors? Can he, as you say, show that he is the leader of this country and end?
Look, the conditions are there for him to do that. But he is stuck in the dynamics of the ANC. I assume he can only do that if the electoral system in this country changes. But given that at this point in time, given that he has no alternative competitor in the ANC, he can unleash his political power within the ANC, like Zuma and Mbeki did. They were conscious of their power and unleashed their power, and they dealt with their detractors. But he seems to want to be a Mandela. When Mandela governed in a period of a honeymoon, Cyril is governing in a moment of crisis. And as George Bush said after 9/11, his job was to make decisions, right or wrong, decide, decide, decide. I'm not convinced that Cyril Ramaphosa is in that state. So he still wants to be a middle point of Mandela, that civil rights movement, yes, but that doesn't work in a crisis environment. He must just make decisions, and decisions.
Dumisani, unfortunately, we have run out of time. It was an absolute pleasure having you. Hopefully, we can have you again for more political wisdom. It has been an absolute pleasure hosting you.
Anytime, my leader. Thank you so much.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Dumisani Tembi, renowned political analyst, as we discussed 3 different topics, of course. John Moody leaving the DA, Herman Mashaba forming Action SA, and of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa, has he strengthened his hand after the ANC-NEC meeting? Well, of course, it has been just over 2 years and 6 months since he has come into power. So the question is, with COVID-19 corruption, with the divisions within the ANC, is he going to go ahead and act as the leader that we as the country truly need at this very moment? Well, this has been another great edition of Truth to Power. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a good one, but most importantly, have a safe one, especially when we see the peak of COVID-19 passing us, but infections rates are still there. So all we ask for you is to keep safe. From the Truth to Power production team and myself, Faraz Patel, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.